I'm very excited for this panel, and this is if you attended the morning panels, there were three interesting ones, right? There was a panel about the mayors talking about economic PPPs and also like thriving for their cities, and there was a panel about sovereignty that you talked about, and this is really creating your wealth plan, like the wealth track, right? So I think the panels kind of like followed each other, this is sort of a subject I'm very passionate about. My name is Reginald Canal. I've been in this sort of finance banking game for about 20 years now, and I'm really super passionate about closing the wealth gap, right? But a lot of times that we hear these words, what we're going to guarantee you this panel, we're going to be very concrete. There's a lot of theories, there's a lot of things we can complain about. Three individuals who each have a very interesting concept of wealth building, where they are, what they've done personally. And so Sabrina Lamb, I've known for a very long time. Sabrina, what she's done amazingly is from a education perspective. A lot of us, we need to be educated about sort of wealth, right? And sort of finance, financial literacy. So for Sabrina, I'll let you share about your new venture, but I think she's coming at it from like education perspective and also a woman building, a founder building a business, right? Gerard, interesting about Gerard is someone who was in corporate America and transitioned to starting his own business, right? So how do you do that? When do you do that, right? So Gerard's going to share interesting perspective of how he started his law practice, right? And that's interesting. And then this one over here is actually quite interesting. A lot of times with my clients, we always say, when would you like to retire, right? In the olden days, it was always 65, right? My young clients, my 30-year-olds, no one's working past 50. You ask them when they're going to retire, they say 50. To meet someone who actually retired mid-40s, she has a very interesting perspective about her story, what she's doing right now, what she's going to do. I think it's three different individual perspectives, but can you tell us about your new venture?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I thought there was somebody in here. Anyway, so as I introduced, my name is Sabrina Lamb, and I came to my new child, Wakeza, as the founder and CEO of a longstanding nonprofit headquartered in New York called World of Money, the leading provider of immersive financial education for children ages 7 to 18. And we serve children not only in New York, but we have partnerships with cities and youth organizations in the United States and 4 African countries. And so all over the decades of this work, often hear from parents, what about us? Because now my child knows more about money and how to manage money and so forth than I do. And so that's when I was speaking in Nairobi, Kenya, and heard about, the challenges in terms of being able to access financial education, financial services, created Wakeza. Wakeza is a Swahili word as spoken in East Africa. I own the trademark for it, and it means save and invest. And it's for families, for the 5 million Black immigrants who immigrate to the United States, as well as the 45 million native-born African Americans, to serve them in our own unique cultural way. So in multiple languages. So it's not one size fits all for me, just because you have, I have a financial education workshop. And is it in Swahili? Is it in French? Is it in Portuguese? And so without truly welcoming us from the African diaspora in honoring and celebrating our unique cultures in our languages, we're not going to speak to the spirit of us, the spirit of our people. We're a spiritual people. So having a framework of all this text on a piece of paper and everyone that doesn't look like them in the content and thinking that one size fits all does not work. So that's what Wakeza is, a fintech social impact. And my vision for it, actually, one other part was I wanted all of us in the African diaspora, if we chose to purchase fractional and whole shares in U.S. publicly traded companies. And then the regulators came in the door and says, no, because you're a citizen of Kenya, you're a citizen of Brazil, you can't. So that's one of the vision still remains, but that's why we're focused on serving the African diaspora families who reside in the United States.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I've asked each panelist before to tell us individually 3 or 4 things that they've done personally to actually show wealth. But before they do that, right? So Gerard, just share with us your working in corporate America, deciding to do a law firm. What was that thinking about, your thought process about starting a firm, and just give us a little bit about the background.
Yeah, sure. Very grateful to be on the panel. Shout out to the guy from Newark. I'm from Newark as well. Brick City in the house. But when I wanted to be I knew I wanted to be an entertainment attorney. I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey. In high school, my parents moved down to North Carolina. So I went to high school, college, law school in North Carolina, moved back up to New York. And I went to a great law school, but the reality is, in a place like New York, if you haven't gone to a top 30 law school or a law school that people recognize, your school doesn't mean shit, basically, is what I was told. And so one of my mentors that I met said, you know, what you can do is really hustle and network. And so while I was in a corporate place doing insurance, corporate defense work, and that would be my 9 to 5. And then my 5 to 9 was hustling, trying to get entertainment opportunities, represent clients, artists, producers, stuff like that. And one day when I was at my mentor's office, he had a bunch of names on the wall. And there was a couple of names that I recognized. And I was like, you know, why do you have these names written out on the wall? And he said, the way the world works, honestly, specifically with networking, is that you may come to ask somebody for something and they may not have something for you today. But if you build a relationship with them and you stay on the front of their mind, eventually something's going to come across their desk. And he said, so those names on the wall are people that I want to remind myself to stay in contact with. And so what I did is I went home. I started with maybe like 3 or 4 names on the wall and just started reaching out to people like, hey, introduce myself. You know, this is what I'm looking for. You know, this is where I'm currently at. And eventually what happened is those people started to reach back out to me. And so 3 names became 5 names, became 10 names, became 20 names. And eventually one of those names that was on the wall was an attorney who was at Afropunk Music Festival. And one day I reached out to that person and it was about a different opportunity that I was going to interview with. And she said, hey, you know, I know you're in the corporate place and you're looking to transition. I'm actually getting ready to leave Afropunk. Would you be interested in taking over for me? And I was like, are you kidding me? Yes. And literally that Friday, I met with the 2 owners and they said, hey, actually, we love that you have insurance experience, because unbeknownst to me at the time is if you're throwing any live event, insurance is one of the biggest parts of it. And so they said, hey, you know what? We're going to throw you in the fire. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with Afropunk Festival, but it's a big festival out of the flagship is in Brooklyn. A lot of hands up.
A lot of folks know Afro.
Yeah, and now they have an event in Bahia as well too, and so I started with that Brooklyn festival. This was April 2016, and so that was kind of like the first opportunity to kind of get my feet wet with something formal, doing entertainment practice, and then just kind of building up on it. And then basically just over time, and this is kind of what Reggie's speaking to, is just making sure that I had the security to be able to make that jump. And that's really, so the goal my whole time was, like, I think someone said earlier on the panel, is start with the finish line in mind. And to me, the finish line was having my own practice, being a full-time entertainment attorney, and that's how I was able to do it.
Fantastic. Can you hear me okay? Is this working? Okay. So you have a different perspective. Give us, from the island experience, and just give us briefly your thought process of where did you end up? And did you think you were ever going to leave this early on? We're going to get to your story and sharing your concrete tips, but give us a little bit of your background, sort of, so they can show like what's happened to you.
I think to Jared's point, for me, understanding what your end game is going to be. And hi, everyone. By the way, my name is Nicole Knight, and I am from the Virgin Islands, born and raised. And to back to answering the question, for me, being someone that grew up on a very, very small island of about 3,500 people, one of the things that I realized early on was that I became a dreamer. I always wanted to know what else was out there in the world. And having been raised in a single parent home, being the oldest of 5, one of the things that always stood out to me was the struggle that my mom had financially trying to raise us. And I remember being very young and thinking, well, I don't want to live that kind of life. That's just not something that there was, just always a lot of stress. And those were my formative years. And so being on a small island, being exposed to these different types of situations at home, I really just started dreaming about something so much bigger for myself. I didn't know what the specific thing was, but I knew I was dreaming for something bigger and something better. And so with regards to my path, I remember very early on telling myself that, 1, I did not want to work so hard for the rest of my life. And 2, again, not knowing how I was going to do it, but realizing that this was something that I was going to pursue. Fast forward to leaving island. Most of us do leave island and we do pursue our education on the mainland. I was able to pursue degree in accounting. I got a master's in taxation. I went into the money business essentially, right? I also got my CPA. I knew that money was going to be the way out. And so very early on, being on the mainland, I realized that I wanted to live a life that was probably a lot less hectic than the one you find on the mainland. And I decided that I wanted to move back home. That was probably the first big decision that I made that propelled me to the path that I am on now. And what that decision was making the decision to move back home and becoming familiar with this industry that was back in the Virgin Islands that incentivized companies to move to the islands in order to get tax benefits. And so it was there that I was introduced to the family office industry. I had never heard of this industry before. I know that it's a big buzzword now, but basically for those who are not familiar, a family office is essentially a private company that is set up by a wealthy individual, usually defined as someone that has more than $50 million plus worth of assets. And this company is basically there to maintain, manage, and grow this portfolio. And so the program in the Virgin Islands allow for a lot of these types of companies to come there as part of their tax planning strategies in order to continue and build generation wealth. So that was my introduction to, oh, wow, this is this new industry. There are people out here with all this money. How do they grow it? How do they maintain it? And so that's where it started for me.
Fantastic. We throw that word, for those of us who've been in banking for a long time, family office is like, everyone says family office, right? But first of all, there's that many folks of color in a family office environment. She's being very humble. She actually set up a very wealthy U.S. family office there, worked for them for 17 years, 18 years. I mean, which is phenomenal, right? So just the fact that her experience, and now there are Black families who are setting up family offices, there's no one that could actually build it and run it for them. I mean, I know you want to rest.
Yes.
I know you want to rest.
I am in my season of rest, and I don't think I mentioned that.
Sorry.
I don't think I mentioned to Reggie's point, at the end of last year, December 2023, I did decide to retire and to live a life of financial
Mid-40s,
freedom.
y'all. Fully retired, y'all. Fully retired.
And so I am in my season of rest and relaxation. I have been overindulging in that. But to your point, I have also been inspired during this time to pursue my social impact entrepreneurship journey. And I have founded a company called Freedom Chaser, which is going to be dedicated to helping and inspiring others to embrace their life of freedom by redefining wealth as not only financial prosperity, but also personal fulfillment and overall well-being.
Okay. So like I talked about, we want this to be very tactical. So I want the panelists to go very fast. I've asked each of them to share with you 3 or 4 tangible things they have done personally for their wealth journey. Okay, so stop. So we want to engage with you also. So we'll start drawing 3 or 4 things that you have done for your wealth creation plan.
The first one obviously is just plan, which goes to what Reggie does. It's just being really thoughtful about the future. So when actually, I guess to get a little more personal, but me and my wife know Reggie through another client of his. But what I liked about it was when we first met, we were talking about buying a house, and at the time, I wasn't sure about what the financial map was going to look like. But sitting down with a financial professional, we were able to map that out, what that plan looked like. So that would be the first one, which I think is pretty obvious. But from a career perspective, I would say diversification. And for me specifically, what that looked like was, and again, going back to the festival as an example, was particularly as an attorney, being a lawyer can be a great vehicle for other areas. And so being at a small place as opposed to, which was kind of ironic because originally I wanted to be at a big shop, a big law firm, something a lot of people think about, after they leave law school. But being at a small festival was really kind of run like a mom and pop, or maybe even like a family office, I guess, to kind of speak to it. But they allowed me to do a lot of different things outside of just being an attorney. So understanding what production looks like, understanding what backline and capturing content, exploiting that content, and then all the rights behind it. So years later, when I look at some of my other contemporaries or other people that I came up with, we all know the law very good, but they're not as well versed in these other parts of the business. And again, another interesting thing about being an attorney is that you're not really supposed to be like a gap stop where it's just yes or no. You're really a cog in the wheel of that business. And so being able to learn those other things and diversify my skill set, has really kind of paid off for me and the other opportunities that I can now take advantage of.
So give us 3 or 4 concrete things that you've done for your wealth.
It started with my own self inventory, my self evaluation, making sure that my financial actions met my financial goals, and a lot of activities that I would routinely spend money on that had a temporary ROI but not have a legacy ROI. I just stopped doing. Yeah, maybe all my friends were going wherever, but that does no longer meet my financial goals. And so for me, it's been about home ownership. It's been about making sure I have my estate planning, making sure that World of Money, continues, because children are my legacy. World of Money children are my legacy. And also my continued financial education. I am obsessed with learning about our historic financial heroes and sheroes, and those who maybe people never heard of, like Jeremiah G. Hamilton in the 1800s, stowawayed on a boat from St. Croix all the way up to New York City, owned from the Poughkeepsie, from Chelsea, the pier, all the way up to Poughkeepsie, called the Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, he had some ethical things he was doing. Okay, but to see about how this 18th century black man from the Caribbean navigated America's racial pitfalls during that time, and sharing those stories with children, because children often say, that's not something we do. We're just consumers, and that's it. And my job is to make sure that I trick my parents out of every nickel they can earn. But when they learn how many centuries we have been perfectly aligned with financial security, no matter what the historic or civil and human rights injustices existed, that we too can have those kind of experiences.
I would say briefly, before I let Nicole go, I would say 1, have a plan, right? What are your goals? 2, it's like most people don't know how much money they need to live on per month or when they want to retire, right? And then having proper professionals, right? So I think in this stage and age, we want to Google everything, which is really, you need a professional, you need a great accountant, you need a great financial advisor, you need a banker, you have a relationship with the banker. So there are things that we just take for granted that we just have to put in place if we're serious about growing our finances and sort of growing our business. Okay, what concrete 3 or 4 things you can share that we all can rest?
You guys have hit on the ones that were instrumental for me, but maybe I can give a perspective from having worked in the family office and some of the things, the takeaways that I took from being in that space around their philosophy around generational wealth. And I know most people associate that general wealth with the money, right? It's the money. But outside of that, fundamentally, what I've seen in these spaces is that these people are very committed to creating family units. They believe that creating a healthy, strong family unit is how they're able to continue to build and maintain and transfer that wealth through to future generations. It's something that really stuck with me because personally, in our culture, unfortunately, that might not be something that we see, and not understanding how important that it is to partner with someone and really build together. You really can go further together. And another thing that I take away from being in that space is that the family unit, again, in our culture, you might see a lot of, crabs in a barrel. There's only enough for one. But these people stick together like no other, right? They understand that being and moving as a unit will only help them further what it is that they're trying to do.
That's awesome. Before we turn it over to questions, can you share one thing if you had to redo, like, was a mistake? You're like, oh, what was the one challenge that you had that you think financially, like, you wish you could do over, or if you would have learned that lesson earlier?
When I had a W-2 employment situation, just socking money away through the 401k, I would have done that. And probably just reflecting on my own ancestors, my grandparents and what they did, I should have done, put everything in order when they did, and or how they did actually. But again, because they loved me so much, I was socialized to be the family consumer, and that's how they showed their love for me. And so of course they would say every once in a while, well, Sabrina, you should really save the money that grandmother gave to you. But unfortunately we were on the way to the mall, so we didn't have time to continue what that was doing. And so if I could change anything, I wish my grandparents and their parents, they were domestics on Miami Beach all of their life. But they owned their own homes. When they passed away, they were debt-free. Their funerals were prepaid. They had everything in order. And they lived in a place called Opelika, Florida, which is Miami. So if there was anything, I wish that I was more aware of the kind of social responsibility, how they really respected money and applied it to my own life. But again, I was at the mall, so who has time?
Gerard?
Funny enough, I actually have the same one that she said about the really taking advantage of the 401k, when I was a W-2 employee, because my mindset was like, oh, I'm leaving. And then, a couple years go by, I'm like, oh, I actually could have taken advantage of that program. So that would be one. But I think overall, I think there's kind of this, or at least I know I had the mindset of, okay, well, when I actually have a certain amount of money, then I can engage, Reggie or the planner or something like that. But, I don't think that there's a set amount. There's no too little that you have to start planning and thinking about the future.
For me, I would say, even though I've been able to get to the position I am in now, very early on, I did get sucked way into the college credit card. I it's so unfortunate that they allowed these credit card companies to come set up shop on campuses. But when I first moved to the States, my first time experiencing everything, I signed my name on probably every one of those applications. I didn't know any better. And so it took me a few years once I did learn to get myself from out under those. But I regret that if I hadn't been there, I probably could have gotten to where I am sooner.
I'd say on my end, I would say we don't think about protection planning enough, right? And so everyone wants to talk about investment. The protection planning is really making sure like if something could go wrong, you plan for it now, right? In terms of like most folks are underinsured, right? And so looking around sort of like that, making sure that, what can go wrong, protect those, and then figure out, other things. I could keep going. Any questions before, any questions out there you have for the panels? I'll ask you, like, what is the one superpower that you think that this crowd, you can help them?
Superpower, I kind of already mentioned that that networking story, but the reason why I like telling that is because I think it makes it very actionable. I think networking is a very buzzword, but like I said, that was one action that I took that I thought was I could really see the results from it, so I could measure, okay, how many people are following up for me to now it's just another habit. But another thing I would say too is having empathy. I think if you're in a people business, you're going to be dealing with people. One thing that I always say is, people may not remember what you told them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so that's kind of one thing I always, hang my hat on in terms of clients and people that come back to me is, they always have something positive to say, because what you really want is your name to hold weight when you're not in the room. And so I think that's kind of one thing that I've learned over my career is just, how you treat people.
What was your superpower?
You know what I would say? Yeah, I would say that my superpower is I have an uncanny ability to mentor and lead people towards what it is that they are wanting to do. I had the pleasure of building an incredible team at the company that I was at, and I credit that, I gauge that success based on how long the staff was with me. I had a stakeholder that I met when I started at the company who is actually still at the company. And I've built a team up to about 10 stakeholders who are still very much committed and loyal to the organization that we work for. And so a lot of the feedback that I've got is that I'm able to really help steer and coach people towards becoming the best version of themselves.
Superpower that you can help this crowd.
The moment that something comes to in my vision, in my spirit, I go for it. I don't check. I don't need somebody's permission or grandmama's permission. I don't need permission outside of my own life in terms of what I intend to pursue. And so what does that mean? That means you didn't do the due diligence, that sort of thing. But World of Money was created out of a thought when I was attending a financial workshop for myself, and I received a whisper, and then I received another whisper when I was in Kenya regarding Wakiza. And so I do the learning by doing. So that's my superpower.
Yeah, I would say for me, I've been in this game for about 20 years. Talking about money that's also a shape. Talking about folks of color. We need that connection. So I think I'm always very mindful of my personal sort of things, and I think it helps when I meet with someone in the person. I've met with some people that I've been able to share their personal finances in that. We live in the park, we're great, we go over all that.
Yeah.
But sometimes financially, people overextend themselves. So if you read over very story, there's no providing something that call.
Yes.
Saying no. So I just look at my daughter's story, we have this thing. And so the one thing you can do for each other is if someone says they can't afford something, why do we give the credit card? Because we want to keep up.
We want to keep up, yep.
Power's buying dinner, and You just have to be comfortable with saying, you know what? It's not for you. It's be comfortable with saying, you want to plan it on better experience? I appreciate it. My friend. Can I just say one thing? Oh, yeah. That's a brilliant question, right? So if you look at, we talked about, so I've been engaging in coaching for the past 9 months, right? And so we took a coach because I was like, oh, I'm going to work on my production, right? The coach found out in terms of like mental health, right? Physical health, spiritual, like, and I know you're going to share about that. It's like, what is wealth for you? What is freedom for you, right? If you're having health issues and you got all the money in the world, is that great? You have bad relationship with your family. You make all this money. Is that great, right? But if you can't pay your bills, but you have a great relationship with your family, is that great, right? And so I think you got to have things moving on all aspects.
Yeah, Regina, we've spoken about this, and I second on that with regards to the discipline. I personally, just like how I mentor and coach, I invest in myself by going out and investing in a coach as well. And so I have that person that helps to keep me accountable to the things that I say I want to do in my personal life. And that's just, some folks can go out and do it on their own. And can be quite disciplined, but in order to get me to the next level of what it is that I wanted to accomplish, I decided to invest in myself in that way.
Calvin, you might have a question for us. Come on, Mr. Financial Freedom Tycoon. Share some wisdom, brother. I'm sure you got a question.
Hi, Simone Bolding from Phoenix, Arizona. My question's for Nicole. As you spoke to the family office, can you speak a little bit to what you saw families actually do, how they worked towards wealth and worked in unity with each other? What did that look like for families? Is it they're working with their partnership, businesses with each other? If you can just speak a little bit to that.
That's a great question. I mean, I honestly, I keep saying this to you, Nicole. There's not that many of us who've actually worked in a real family office, right? To actually share that knowledge of how this family became a billionaire, but did some things. But just drop some nuggets for them, please, Nicole.
Yeah, so of course, I will say that throughout my career, I've worked with 3 different family offices under the program that does exist in the Virgin Islands. And so some of the things that I've seen them do and do well is that they run their family office like a business. So for example, they are like a corporation. In fact, there are quarterly board meetings where they are sitting, they're reviewing their financial outlook. There are lots of policies in place around their investment strategy, what that looks like. Do we need to alter it? Do we need to change it? They are engaging with the highest of talent in order to make sure that they're executing upon the strategies and policies that they set out for themselves as a family. And so you see them come together, and it's amazing because it's like they literally turn off the I'm related to you switch, and they put on corporate hats, and when they come around the table to each other, it's like they are running a business, and they understand that of course there are differences. Again, not everybody might agree on an investment that the investment committee might bring before them. So it's really a balancing act of making sure that they are aligned as a whole with regards to what it is that they want to accomplish. Does that help? So I would say formally they meet, they have a structure in place where they meet quarterly, but there's always some type of an informal meeting. And they realize that even though they might have a great staff in place, great talent in place to keep this business running, at the end of the day, they need to be fully engaged to some extent in case things come up that need their input.
So dovetailing on what Nicole just says, and maybe some may think, well, family offices, that's way over there. That's not anything within our grasp. But I always encourage families. You all should be meeting at least once a month. Families are businesses. You have revenues, you have expenditures, there's threats to it, and making sure that everything is organized and having your children to participate in the conversation and how we can lower the expenditures in the house and bringing in more assets. You all have family offices. You just have not leveraged or faced that you do have a family office, but you need to have conversations, because often our conversations are when we can't find Miss pearls and we fighting over the crock pot and stuff.
Just to add on that, Sabrina, you added a note that I wanted to elaborate on, which is about the children. Okay, these families start to educate their young kids from the time that they can literally walk. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. They present them and they are exposed to a life that is one of curiosity around how it is that they're able to establish the things that they're being exposed to. And so that is something that I know you're passionate about. I'm passionate about. This financial literacy piece is still, I know we're talking about it, it's a buzzword, but it is still something that we are lacking tremendously on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the family office piece that we talk about, we may be out of reach or whatever. I had the fortunate opportunity to go to high school and college with a lot of folks whose families had family offices. And as you grow older, you then realize some of the things that you saw when you were younger. And I don't want to emphasize the family part of the family office, right? Because in many instances, you saw those families not only tighten it about money. Money was a segment of what their family dealt with on a day-to-day basis. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of some of the wealthiest families that the world has, and to see that dad that might be greater than life on national television or whatever it is that they're doing, when they're with their family, they're dads, right? The mothers are mothers. Even if they're fighting with each other or there's some issue going on, like, every Christmas, I knew these families to come together and to talk about how they gifted money to each other for the tax benefits of it. And that started at inception, right? Money that they put into different endowments and things, and having that conversation as dinner conversation makes it so much easier when you're 20, right? And you don't even realize when trading stocks and having a policy in place on how you invest your money, the things you will do with your money. You've been talking about it your whole life. It becomes a whole lot easier. I mean, I remember showing up to college being like, I don't know what a stock is, right? And I was talking to a young lady who I went to college with not too long ago, that before Apple broke, I remember a group of them getting together in our dorm room talking about this company that they thought was going to take off, and their parents were investing in it, and how we all should invest in it at that point in time, right? And folks who have now made tens of millions of dollars off of Apple stock, off of a couple thousands of dollars back in college, right? So I just wanted to emphasize the family piece of it and how we should be talking to our children and everybody else regularly around the table about these issues.
Yeah, you want to say something? I would say it's a couple of things, right? I think this is a very complicated, sort of solving or closing the wealth gap. But there's disciplined, systematic things you got to do to put in place, right? It's not overnight, right? But these are conversations and practices that you got to start doing if you really want financial freedom.
This has been a fascinating discussion. The one The one thing that I'll add, what I find with our team is sometimes talking about, well, my name is Michael Aiken. I run a social impact consulting firm. And we spend a lot of time within our team working on wealth creation as a concept of employment, not something that you work and then later wealth happens. You have to talk about it together. I find that sometimes the discussions in the abstract become really unhelpful in some ways, but discussions around specifics are personal, and people don't want to bring that level of personal to work. And so what we've done is tried to open up the finances of the business in a very transparent way to introduce cash flow, loss, revenue, debt financing. And we started this in the early days of the pandemic when we were saying, your jobs are fine, your jobs are fine. All they really had was my word for that. That's different than every week we're going to open up the entire financial dashboard and show cash flow and all that. Once you start that, you can't suddenly decide you're no longer going to do that. So we now every 2 weeks open up the full finances to the entire team. And I found that the discussions around wealth creation and personal finance became easier once they became less abstract. So I'm wondering if others have had a similar way of introducing the topic by making it real that I might be able to learn from.
Gerard, you want anything? You want anything there? The only thing I would say, let me just say one quick thing about, and we talked about this. I know everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody could be an entrepreneur. I mean, I know it was said in the last panel.
Yes, we have.
And I have clients who are like, I'm going to take my 401k. No one believes in me. I'm going to start a job. There's no health insurance. There's no 401k. Like, so we got to be mindful when we say everyone should not be an entrepreneur. Let's just get that. You got a great idea. Great. You want to start a fund? Yes. But the thing is, the folks who are in the W-2s, some of these companies, there's a lot of perks. We don't even take the full match. We don't take the 401k. We don't understand their stock options. We don't understand that they're like, so there are things, and I know there were things that the average person can do to start their wealth journey that it's not like, I need to start a business and get the business sold. So just, I always want to say, like, I love the entrepreneur thing. It's not for everybody.
So the question was, how do you introduce the topic? Well, at worldofmoney.org, that's our website. World of Money is the leading provider of immersive financial education for ages 7 to 18, headquartered in New York, 120 classroom hours. So we not only introduce, we throw the children into a pool of financial knowledge, because it's almost like learning a foreign language. Financial education is not like attending a 1-hour workshop. There is behaviors, there's history, there are value systems. Many children have said as young as 8 years old that they didn't believe that they should start saving their money because that's not what Black folks do. Okay? That's not part of their family culture. And so we have about 25, 30 people here right now. We're talking to 35 different money personalities right now. Some of you hear it. Maybe, hopefully all of you hear it. Some of you are not, maybe you grew up with a dictator family father. Maybe you grew up with a martyr type mother who believes, I just need to sacrifice myself just to prove I love you. You know, so that type of personality is not going to save a nickel, no matter how many panels we have, because they have a martyr type personality. So fortunately, a lot of these different money personalities, parents stand aside and allow their children to have a better life than they did. And children come into this world understanding how money works. That's why they're able to trick their parents out of it. That's how. And so, but we reshape their understanding and move them from being consumers to being savers, to being investors and entrepreneurs and philanthropists. Without those five paths, we do not have a proper relationship or engagement with money. So we don't just introduce, we throw you in the pool and teach you why or how this benefits you. Because for children, their number one question, right, parents, is why? So we always explain the why you need to know this and how it benefits you, because children are very sociopathic and they want to know how's this work for me? Because children are never going to sit their parents down and say, well, how is your 401k plan, mother or father? But we teach children, we pour into their self-centeredness and then, bridge that out and tap into their love for their family and show how they can benefit not only themselves, their families, and their communities.
Almost at the end. Any final questions?
Appreciate you. And thank you. Well, I'm Ryan. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona as well. And thank you guys so much for sharing some of your insight. My question is for Nicole as well, following up on the family office question. Can you speak a little bit about the portfolio allocation at those levels, the shift in capital markets from higher net worth or ultra high net worth individuals, and whether or not, or when that makes sense, when that shift begins to happen, or what drives that shift from public markets to private markets, and can folks who aren't quite there at the ultra high net worth individual level emulate that successfully?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So I've seen many different approaches, having worked with different family offices, and really fundamentally what it comes down to is what does that family believe in as their methodology with regards to creating that wealth. I've been with family offices who, because I've been at it a long time, start off really heavy on hedge funds, and of course over the course of whatever that time frame was, decided they wanted to transition away from that particular product. And what they've done is mainly double down on private equity and real estate, and it just depends on what their comfort level. Prior to that, there was a strategy where they wanted to also, they would want to invest also internationally. Over the years, I've seen them step away from that methodology and really keeping their money in the U.S. And, every quarter, again, as part of these meetings that would be held, they are presenting where they are now. Each of the investment managers are presenting each of the portfolios. This is where we are now. These are the things that are looking good. These are the things that we think we need to get. It is a continuous process of evaluating. But what I've seen over the past few years is that it's mostly private equity and real estate. There's very little funds, at least for the families that I work for, that are in the stock market. They maintain a very minimal liquid portfolio, and that's kind of been the recipe that we've been managing for them for a few years now.
I'd like to know the specific company, Nicole.
No, ma'am.
No. So I want to be mindful for time. So I would like.
Is that what you're asking?
I would like the panelists to give your final nuggets. Sort of, the topic was, it's wealth plan, wealth creation plan. Just final words for the group about your whatever you want to share. Sort of final thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Again, I think starting with the finish line in mind, I really love that someone said. Like I said, I think that was my plan, and again, and then being open to adjusting that finish line as well. So making the plan, having the goals, and then adjusting that.
For me, while I am in my season of rest and relaxation, I am just being inspired to encourage as many people as I can to pursue a life of freedom. I think, unfortunately, we have been indoctrinated into a society where we are literally brainwashed to think that we need to work until we, are not good, right? We pour the best quality portions of our lives into corporations or, the hustle, the grind, of entrepreneurship with there never being sort of like an end game in sight other than the fact that, oh, you're going to retire at this age. I really want to disrupt that narrative around you got to work until you're 65, 67, because I don't think that that's the way it was intended for us to be. And so that's kind of, been my flag that I've picked up over the past few months, and I have nothing but time in order to see what I can do to make that a reality.
All right, bring us home, Sabrina, briefly.
I hope that you all remember that your life is worth saving. I hear a lot of Black Lives Matter. If your life really matters, you will save to sustain it. And if you really want to lower the emotional chaos in your life, in your family, in your town or city or country, that would be more intentional about accepting that and stare straight in the face of your money. And how, no matter how much you think you have or don't, because money respects money. And if you don't respect it or value your own life, we were just talking. So today, before you leave Rio, or if you live here in Rio or Brazil, determine in 365 days, how much more would you have saved? Because the self-respect and self-regard for your own life has deepened.
Thank you. And so my final thoughts is this. This is an area that I'm deeply passionate about. I think this is a festival of diaspora. For some of us, it's cultural, right? And so my first Jewish friend was my college roommate, right? He was buying stocks. He had a stockbroker. I was buying sneakers. So it's a different mentality sometimes if you weren't born with the money that this was what we talked about, right? And so it's education, it's learning, financial freedom, it's stress, right? Because a lot of the people are stressed out. 3 out of 4 people are stressed out at work. They can't function on their jobs because they think about how they pay their bills, right? And so I would say to you is wherever you are, it's not too late. Wherever you decide to go, it's just a step forward. We're not going backwards. We can't look at the mistakes we did in the past. But the ultimate freedom is financial freedom, right? So we all want to be freedom chasers, right? We all want to join you to rest. So I want to thank the panelists for joining. Thank you for indulging us, attending, and your participation. And I wish you all financial freedom and the best to you and your family. Thank you.